Cool. All right. Well, let's get started. Thanks a lot for joining us. Thought this was a bit of thought we'd try something different this year. So we're going to do these Rotterdam Round Ups every evening at 6 o'clock, just to provide a little update on what's been happening through the day. Obviously, we're watching the rehearsals and some of the press conferences over in Rotterdam. Danny and myself and Hass, who can't be with us today but should be with us from tomorrow, are joining the press centre live from the comfort of our living rooms. And Adrian is our man in Rotterdam. Not that we're getting severe FOMO and are feeling very envious at all, lucky bastard. But yeah, but no. So we've had the first day of rehearsals and press conferences. Actually, before we get started, Danny, do you want to, or Adrian, do you want to just describe what the setup is like this year? Because it's obviously totally different to kind of what we've dealt with normally.
Yeah, so this year there are, I think it's about 1,000 fans or press people who are joining the online. Yeah, they're joining the online press centre, and it's basically a web browser. And in the web browser, there's a chat facility, so you can manage to chat to all the other accredited press. And then there's sort of little rooms that you go into, a bit like a little Zoom room where you go into and you can watch the rehearsals. And you can also go into the meet and greets or press conferences in little separate rooms. And there's a good little programme where you can put favourites onto the ones that you want to see. So you've got your own little agenda and things. Yes. And you can actually, if you need to contact any of the delegations for anything such as interviews, then you can contact them directly through that. In previous years, you had to have email addresses or telephone numbers. So it's actually a really, really good way. And it does actually feel a lot more of a social aspect than it has been in previous years, because in previous years, you just kind of sat in your own little groups and you might have waved to people across. And I know it's a bit kind of ironic that it seems more sociable when it's online, but you have that chance to chat to so much more people than you would never normally do during things. So yeah, I'm really impressed with it. A couple of teething issues with at the beginning with a few of the rehearsals with sound and things like that, but that's something that happens every year. For those of you that are on the call, I can see Monty and Jodie and a few others, you'll know that there is situations in the past where we've had full rehearsals and you've not seen or heard anything at all. So yeah, first days of it went pretty much straightforward overall, and it's a really nice kind of atmosphere. I don't think it replaces being in the press centre and having that kind of sort of vibe from things, but you know, it's nice. I can go make my own coffee while watching rehearsals and stuff and things. It's a nice backup, but I don't think it would replace that. I do think though that in future years it probably will be something that they'll keep going, because I can't see them taking away the online thing now, so it might become a more regular thing where they'll have less press in the press centre and more press online. And
yeah, as Monty's replying to Neil's comment, you don't see the whole thing, so it's not like they've got kind of a camera kind of fixed on the stage and you're just watching the whole rehearsal, so you don't see the kind of the chat with the directors and things being moved around. You do just see the performance, basically, that that bit of the rehearsal, and not the very first one either. I think that confused a couple of people at the start, but that's been standard practice before. There is a closed run through first, and then you see the next couple. Shall we kick off and go through kind of the songs that we saw today? First up, and there was a lot of yellow for early on a Saturday morning. Should have worn my yellow jacket. But first up, it was, of course, Lithuania. Now, we didn't really hear or see a lot of them. There are a few technical issues, but guys, what were your impressions of Lithuania?
Very yellow for very early on a Saturday morning. They had lots of energy. It was a little bit Heidi High meets Big Bird. It was a lot of yellow going on. But they opened the show really excellently. It's a high energy song with a very high energy performance. The dance is pretty much the same sort of dancing as and the same routine as their national final in Lithuania, and actually the same as last year as well. It's pretty much exactly what you'd expect, I think, from this act. They are doing exactly what they're supposed to do, I think.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it's a fantastic opener. It's something that's going to get the audience going right from the start, and it just stands out a mile. Slightly different staging with the background and things, but overall it was tight, it was slick. They had the vocals on point, and for me, I think that we're going to, you're going to hear this all the time, and I'm only going to say this once. It's sailing through, and that's the only time I'm going to say that in the entire history of this week. But yeah, I think they should be very pleased with that, and yeah, roll on the next rehearsal. on Thursday, or is it Friday? I think it's Thursday, or is it Wednesday? But who knows?
It's a perfect opener. I mean, you know, we all as sort of super fans will have got to this stage now where we're not exactly that we're bored of the songs, but there was nothing about its performance that I'd say was surprising, kind of based on what we've seen already. But if you view it through the prism of someone who's sitting down on the Tuesday night to see it for the first time, it's going to stand out. And I can't, you know, I'm rubbish at predictions, but I can't see any reason why that A, won't qualify, and B, won't get a pretty good result in the final.
Yeah, so let's do a hit, miss, or maybe through each of the songs to see what we think about whether we think it's going to qualify. So hit is a definite qualifier, and maybe is a possible, and a miss is probably they're going home on the next flight home. What do we think, Alasdair?
Hit.
Yep, hit for me.
Yeah, same. If it means if I think it will qualify, I don't actually really like it that much myself.
Okay, good. Right, up next then was Slovenia. They had the dreaded draw of coming up second, which is something that no one ever really wants to have. Nothing's ever won from second place, although quite a few songs have qualified from second place, but it still is seen as that poison chalice position. What do we think of Slovenia then?
Well, it was interesting because she did a few things that were different. So in her first run through, or the first one we saw at least, she made a misstep as she was coming down a step, and her heels wobbled under her. She kicked them off and kept on going. And I thought she handled it really professionally, but it was interesting to see that sort of how to handle these kind of things. And what I thought, so what you see when she's performing is there's a backdrop behind her of the earth, of stars, and I think she is the first to actually use the kind of drop-down screen. If there's probably a more technical term than the drop-down screen, but it comes down sort of out in the catwalk area, and on that there are sort of scenes of the earth, of like different landscapes and so on. It kind of, I think I wrote on the blog that it gives it an expansive kind of feel, but it also maybe gives it a little bit of a lost feeling. And it was interesting in her meet and greet at some point, one of the people there asked about these images and what the kind of meaning behind them was. And actually, she didn't really know. I think they could literally have put up any picture behind her and she would have been like, oh, I don't know, someone else chose that for me. So I kind of feel it probably is going to get lost.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think I liked it more than I expected to. I've always been slightly underwhelmed by that song, even though I think she's undoubtedly got a good voice. And the voice kind of came to the fore. She really belts it out. But there's just something about it that you get to the end of the song and you think, oh, I can't remember what happened there. Everything's good about it. It's a good performance. The staging is spectacular. It's actually one of the best uses of the big backdrop screens that we saw today, apart from one other song that's coming up soon. But I just don't think it's got enough to just cut through.
Yeah, I think she has probably one of the best voices in the competition this year. I love her low register. It's very, very uncommon to have that in a female singer, and I just think it just sounds really fantastic. And she's looking great as well. Very simple white number with an off the shoulder. And she kind of does this bit where she walks onto the catwalk towards the end of the song. But I think for my problem is this: she's better than the song, and that's something that's going to come along later on with another song later on. And I just feel that it's just missing something as a song, which is a shame because vocally she deserves to qualify and she might get some jury love from that, but I just think that the televotes are just going to miss it completely and it's going to really struggle to qualify, I think.
There's also something in her, in the staging, in the lighting of this song, and also you see this with Leslie Roy for Ireland as well. It's very bright at some points, and it's sort of a little bit exposing this brightness on the stage, and it's almost like they need to bring the lighting levels down like 20% just to give a little bit of light and shade to their faces, because otherwise they are really brightly lit. It might of course be different on the actual broadcast. Maybe the way the cameras work and the lighting might change a little bit by then, but I did notice that it was like there's a lot of face I'm seeing here, and I would like to see a little less of that.
Yeah.
And it was quite interesting because it's the, I know it was only song number 2, but it's the first chance to really see the big change this year with the use of pre-recorded backing vocals and making the most of that choir. didn't quite. I thought they could have made more of that, to be honest. But yeah, it was there.
This is like a recurring theme for me with regards to the backing vocals. A lot of the songs this year are not using live backing singers, but they're using the backing track. And I think for some of the songs, it does give that extra push. But for some of the gospel type songs and the big songs with big vocals, you do miss that raw power from an actual live vocal, which would give that kind of that more energy. And it just kind of sounds a little bit processed and it misses a little bit, which is kind of a bit of a ironic, because although it sounds stronger, it's also missing that feeling, if that makes sense. But anyway, what do we think then? Hit, miss, or maybe for Slovenia?
Miss.
I'm moved more from miss to maybe, but I still think on balance a miss.
I think it's a miss, and if it does get through, it'll be from the juries. But yeah, miss for poor Anna.
And I think one of the reasons why is because it's stuck between Lithuania and song number 3, Russia. So it's really going to get lost there, because Russia, well, that was quite a performance.
Wow, yeah, and Russia actually won the vote in today's press centre vote from one of the websites. Has one every
always
year.
So reliable.
That is true, but this was the first one that I thought, wow, I got a moment when I watched this. I thought it was something really special. I really enjoyed her performance. What did you think of it, Adrian?
I think there's a really great energy to her performance. A little bit of how you think about this, I think, will be how much you're predisposed to liking her song already. I like it. I like its kind of eclectic sound, and I like its attitude, that it's it's an attacking song in a way. So she comes onto the stage wearing this slightly ridiculous looking dress sort of car, which sort of moves her around. The dress, I think, is made from fabrics from every region of Russia or something like this. And it's wearing her. She's not wearing the dress. And it's actually driving her around as well. It's a motorized dress in some way. But at some point, I think that works as a really nice sort of metaphor for femininity and womanhood and so on. But she actually breaks out of it. She opens a door in the dress, as you do, and walks out of the dress. Yes, you could call it a Dalek look if you wanted to.
Only at Eurovision is the phrase "she walks out of the dress."
Yeah, and she's wearing a red boiler suit in this next bit. And if you've seen the national final performance, it's very similar to that from the stage when she's in a round and does her bit. But she has swagger. She has just something about her that just commands the stage. I love everything she stands for. She's very LGBT positive, and she's from is it Tajikistan, I think it is originally. Correct me if I'm wrong, someone. Monty's saying right. Yes. Monty's our Russophile, so he knows all about that. But yeah, I think it's a really standout performance, and this is a song that actually is one that does so much better when it's live than on studio version, I think. And I think this is definitely one to watch. It's going to do a lot better than people think it is.
Yeah. It's not
really
quite as
sorry, go ahead.
It doesn't come across quite as chaotic as it did at that national final when we all first saw it for the first time. I think it almost lost a slight bit of that sort of rawness.
I think it has lost a little bit of that kind of chaos energy attitude, which actually could help it. It did occasionally feel flat. Like, I love the bit in the national final where she does a high kick randomly out of nowhere. It's just like, oh, she's cool, she's high kicking. But I think maybe when there's an audience there for the jury shows, for the live shows, that she might feed from that audience of 3,500 people and add to it. So I think it's a really strong performance. I really want to see the whole backdrop, because there seems to be so many Russian art historical references in that backdrop. I just want to sort of look at it and sort of explore each and every one and see, well, what is this reference? What is this message that they're trying to get across? Because I think it's really fascinating and interesting.
Yeah, I've got some comments here. Monty's saying that the performance adds small embellishments that really adds to the show, and the backdrop has some beautiful moments. Yeah, I would definitely agree with that, Monty. I think that of today, out of all the songs, for me, this is the one that's improved the most in my rankings from all 6 performances, I would say. So what do we think? Hit, miss, or maybe?
I think I'm going with a hit.
Yeah, I think a hit for me too. A few other anyone would give a thumbs up or thumbs down for that? Although you that I've seen it. Quite a few maybes, but I think it's mostly positive for that one. So I think Russia should be pleased. Right. So after that, we had a lunch break, and that gives us time to recharge our batteries and things. So Adrian has prepared us a lovely little presentation on Rotterdam, just to give us a little bit of an idea of what Rotterdam is like. I know we're not going to be there this year, but it gives us a little idea of what we're missing out on. So over to you, Adrian.
Yeah, I thought this would be quite nice to kind of give some context to where Rotterdam is, what its history is a little bit, and might give some context also to the things that we will see in the interval act and opening performances and so on. But what I need to do is quickly share my screen. So let me go here, and let me. You can see it now on my screen.
Yeah, we can see it now.
Yeah. Okay, right. So Rotterdam is in the south of the Netherlands. I don't know if you can see my mouse, but it's hovering over Rotterdam right now. It's in the province of Holland. So many of you might call this country Holland, but it is actually the Netherlands, and Holland is two provinces, North Holland and South Holland. Rotterdam is, as I said, in South Holland, and it's a very maritime city. The river Maas flows through Rotterdam, and the Ahoy Arena is in the south of the city. So you can see there where Ahoy is in what it was probably a very industrial part of the city at one point, but is now less so. Any of you who follow football will maybe know of Feyenoord, the Rotterdam team. They've won the Dutch First Division many times, and a lot of Rotterdammers are very proud Feyenoord supporters. This is the Ahoy Arena. It's actually made up of several different venues in one complex. So the press center, I guess, is in one of those, and the arena itself is one of the biggest in the Netherlands, along with perhaps the Ziggo Dome in Amsterdam, which some of you may have been to at some point. Yeah, that's Ahoy. So Rotterdam is sort of very much defined by its industrial heritage, by it being a port city. It is one of the largest ports, if not the largest, in Europe. These paintings come from the Rotterdam Museum of different parts of the city. And I really love going to visit Rotterdam because I live in Amsterdam, and Amsterdam is a sort of, for all its beauty, is a very cramped city in which most of the streets are within 5 or 6 rings of a canal. Rotterdam is much bigger. There's a lot more space, a lot more horizon, and you feel like you're almost at the sea, even though you're a little bit inland in Rotterdam. Also, you can see here, it's a very modern city, and there are reasons for that. The industrial heritage is all over the place. Some of you might think that this is a very ugly building, but it is the Maas silo, and this is where, had Eurovision gone ahead last year and this year in the same way as it has before, this is where the Euro Club would have been. It might not look so nice from the outside, and actually inside it is also quite an industrial building still, but it's also a nightclub and bar complex.
That looks like the standard of some of the Euro Club venues we've been in over the years.
When I first, the Dutch fan club took us on a tour there at one point, and I did think, how are people going to react to this venue, which does look like a grain silo, because it is. So anyway, we never got to have the fun of going to Maas silo. This is the main church of the city. It's called the Lawrence Church. Around Eurovision time, it did get renamed the Duncan Lawrence Church. And the Lawrence Church was one of the only things that have actually, one of the only buildings that has survived the bombardment of Rotterdam, which we'll talk about in a second. Also, Rotterdam is known as a city of migration to and from the Netherlands. So this is the Hotel America, where many people stayed before taking a boat to America, particularly people from Eastern Europe who traveled overland to Rotterdam and then took ships with the Holland America line to the United States and other parts of the Americas. Also, Rotterdam is a very multicultural city. It has, I think, over 150 different nationalities living in it, particularly those related to former Dutch colonies like Suriname, Indonesia, and Cape Verde, and other places. That wasn't a Dutch colony, but there's a lot of people from Cape Verde there. It also is a very modern city in its architecture. This is the Witte House, or the White House, which was actually the first skyscraper in Europe. It was built in 1897, and it doesn't look as sort of exciting as this now, but it was definitely a sort of a early pioneer in terms of new modern architecture. As I mentioned, the city in World War II was bombarded and almost completely flattened. That happened on the 14th of May in 1940. And that's the Lawrence Church that you can see there, but the rest of the city centre was almost entirely flattened. So then moving on from that, the city started to rebuild itself. And you'll see a lot about this, I think, in the interval acts and in the performances. In the Dutch performances this year. And it became very much known as a city of modern architecture because a lot of it was obviously rebuilt in the 50s and has sort of continued to be rebuilt time and time again. This is the Erasmus Bridge, which I'm sure we will see many times in the performances this year. I think a performance in the interval act will actually be filmed on the Erasmus Bridge. Similarly, I think also the Holland America Line Hotel, New York, I think a performance for one of the intervals has been filmed there too. I think it was Mons, but don't quote me on that. The Erasmus Bridge was built in the 90s and is named after Erasmus, the philosopher from, I think, the 14th or 15th century, who was from Rotterdam. These are also some of the other modern architecture from Rotterdam, a very strange set of houses that are sort of cubed, but on an angle. People do actually live in them, and one of them is a museum, but I've never actually been able to go to it as yet, but they were built in the 70s. This is the Markt Hall, or the Market Hall. Inside, there's a large market, a bit more upscale market now, more kind of borough market, let's say, than your average fruit and veg market. But all around the roof, the people live in those. Actually, a former colleague of mine lived in one of those apartments. And the colors you see is actually an artwork. It's one of the largest artworks in the world. And one of the newest buildings is this glass-clad, I'm not sure what shape it would be, cylinder, I guess, which is a museum depot, which will be open for visits from this summer onwards. And there is where they're also counting down the days to Eurovision. It's now far less than 63. But when I visited in March, it was still 63. And what's really cool about this building, I think, is that you can see the whole skyline of Rotterdam in it. And it really shows off the skyline of the city in a really cool way. That's it. I will stop sharing now.
Well, thanks a lot, Adrian. That was a very interesting overview of what is a very, very nice city.
Yeah, that's like a gorgeous city. But, and I'm getting a bit choked up now that we're going to go visit that this year. But
it's kind of, I wouldn't know. I don't know if I would say it's gorgeous. It all sort of depends on your perspective on what you think is gorgeous. It reminds me a little bit of Manchester in a way, in that it has that kind of industrial heritage, and you can see that in so many of the buildings. And it also has a really cool attitude as a city. It is the sort of phrase and the slogan of the city is "Make it happen." And Rotterdam is a place where people will make things happen, like bringing Eurovision to Rotterdam. So there are bits of it that are really concretey and a little bit like a 1950s precinct that you might find in the new town, which some might consider to be gorgeous, others might think of as less gorgeous.
Oh, I love it. It's one of my favourite cities in Europe, as people who know me know well. I've banged on about Rotterdam enough. So that was both fascinating and depressing equally, knowing that I'm stuck in London. But
cool.
Shall
we get back to today's business?
We rattle on with the last few songs. So next up was it was
Sweden. So yeah, I did say that this was after the break, but actually Sweden was before the break, so I do apologise for that. We had 4 songs, then a break, then an extended break, which we'll come on to in a minute. But yeah, Sweden, which for me, this was one where I was obviously, MF is such a big thing, and usually when Sweden come on stage, they do what they said in the tin, and the performance is very MF style. For me, what I think this year the issue was that Tussie had had an operation on his vocal cords recently, and he's had a couple of live performances where he has been not good at all. And a lot of people have been thinking, is his performance going to be any good? Is he going to struggle to qualify? Let me tell you, he had no problems today whatsoever. He's back on track and back on form.
Yeah, I think the word, I liked this, but I think the word for it is safe. It is a very safe performance. It is pretty much what you saw in the Melody Festival, but with a few embellishments here and there. He's wearing a slightly different costume. He's sort of, the fabric is a little bit lighter rather than crushed velvet from March. He's now in satin, I think. He's wearing long black gloves, which do look like he's about to do something different with them, but they are embellished with jewels, so I hope he isn't going to do what he looks like. And it is a kind of, there's a lighter moments in it. The color of the stage is lighter. There's brighter moments in there rather than the darkness that was there in Sweden. It's perhaps really interesting to think about if that darkness in Sweden, they did this with like John Lundvik as well. If the darkness is there because it's March and it's Stockholm and it is dark still, whereas when they move to May, that darkness doesn't exist. It's light up until 10 o'clock in the evening. And if there's that's in their mentality, I don't know. But it was also interesting in the meet and greet with him. His head of delegation was speaking really boringly about what they have done. She was like, yeah, we pretty much did the same performance as we did in Melody Festival, and we changed some small things, and it was okay, and it's nice. And Tusse was like, woman, please give some more energy, do say something more, sell this performance well, because he's doing his best to sell it. And it was really interesting. She just really didn't seem to be that excited by what they were doing.
Yeah, he's a really engaging person. I don't know if that always comes across quite in his performance yet. And I think we saw from the meet and greet, from the press conference, kind of, you know, what he's capable of, you know, in terms of his personality. And I think that is still an area that I think just needs to be worked on as part of the performance. As Danny said, you know, vocally he was fine. I mean, kind of by the last run through, he sounded like he was straining a bit at the end. But remember, these are rehearsals, so they're not going to kind of go out and give it their all. They're there partly to kind of test the waters and kind of get a feel for the place. This worked with the pre-recorded backing vocals. I thought it was aided by that, and nothing spectacular. You know, obviously, as we said, not a huge amount different from the mellow performance. Will it qualify? Well, we'll come to our hit miss and maybe in a moment.
Yeah,
but
I want to add in that I love him and I love everything he stands for, and his personality and everything. I think is actually better off stage than it is on stage. I think he's a really good singer, but he won Idol last year, so he is still quite inexperienced. So I think it maybe needs a couple more years to grow into himself to become that kind of star that I think he definitely is. And I think the reason why I won MF was because people in Sweden went through that journey with him of becoming an unknown singer to becoming an Idol winner and stuff. And I'm not sure if people across Europe will see that so much, because they don't know who he is. But failing that, I think it's a safe. Sweden know what they're doing, and I don't think that it's anything they should be worried about. But I can't see us being in Stockholm or Gothenburg or Malmo or even in Kiruna next year. It's a safe qualifier, but it's for me, it's not a winner. So, Mr. Maybe.
Maybe.
It's that qualifying stages. It's a hit, I would say.
Hit, definitely a hit for me as well.
I think hit. I don't know if any of you have read On Europe and Monty's predictions, but I firmly agree with Monty that this actually could win. It's an undivisive song in a year of divisive songs, and it could come up by default a bit Emily DeForest-esque. But actually, looking at today's performances, the 7 or 8 that we saw this morning, I should say, this would be down somewhere in my middle area. So I would probably, by that logic, say maybe.
Interesting. Okay. So then moved on to Australia. Now, obviously, Australia should have been performing here, but unfortunately, due to the pandemic, they're not able to make it. And we were supposed to get a backstage video of the recording of the live tape performance, and we did, but it lasted something of 45 seconds, and by the time I got to see it into the room, it'd gone, so I had to watch it back on YouTube. And if you watch YouTube, it's there. So not really much we can say about this, really, is there?
No, well, she's wearing latex or PVC. It's black. There are little technicolored bits in her hair. There also seemed to be a kind of a cloak kind of at one point. But you didn't really get much of a sense of what the actual performance is going to be like, except that she will like trill her way through it. Yeah, that's all I'm going to say about that.
Yeah, difficult to know kind of what to say, because, you know, they didn't need to be a rehearsal as such, because it was just a, you know, so it was good they did something to kind of acknowledge that that Australia is not there, but is still, you know, taking its place in the lineup. So yeah, hard to know what to say. It was good to get to see a little bit of the backstage footage, but I don't think we learned anything from those clips that we didn't already know.
It's very hard to predict this one, because we're not going to have any idea until the first run through of the first semi-final on a week on Monday. So we're not going to really know anything about that since then. But it isn't one of the favourites to qualify, and this is the first year that I think people are saying that Australia are really going to struggle. Whether or not it might get some sympathy votes because it's the only country that's not going to be there, it might not. But it's impossible to predict this, I think, at the moment, until you're comparing apples to oranges for me. So I'm going to abstain on the vote for this one at the moment, because I just can't tell.
Oh, I'm not. It's a miss.
I'm going to go with a maybe, I think. Okay. And it'll be interesting, because what obviously we couldn't tell from that clip is how different it's going to feel for the TV audience moving from a live performance in the arena to the live on tape performance, and will there really be a difference in kind of vibe and atmosphere?
And you have to feel for her, because that's the second year in a row where she's missed out. Okay, she's got the chance to represent her country, but to have that again and be waiting a whole year, and then to have basically that's her done now. She can't do anything more. She's already recorded a performance, and that's her journey all pretty much finished. I have to kind of feel for her and stuff, but she seems to be taking it well. And again, she's another person that I really think, I love what she stands for and everything. And she's I think she's got a forced personality, forced to be reckoned with personality. So I hope she does well, but yeah.
I'm afraid I have to agree with Jodie in the comments. I find the Australian song, not the singer or anything like that, I find the song pretty awful. It just grates on my nerves.
Yeah.
And I think over the last few years that the novelty of Australia being in Eurovision is slightly dwindling. Their televotes aren't as strong as we might think they are. I think in 2019 they just had that amazing novelty of being on bendy poles, and that sort of boosted them. But I don't know if I see a lot of things that people here to vote for, particularly if she's not in the arena, and maybe we won't get that kind of connection across the camera.
Yeah, Monty's saying that Junior Eurovision stipulated the set much more than the ESC has for tape performances. There was much more standardization. I think that was because everyone was on tape, so they had to do that. Whereas this time, I think it's more of a kind of backup thing. But it will be kind of interesting to see how they fit it in from a technical geeky perspective. It'll be nice to see how they fit that in. But yeah. But anyway, let's move on to the next one.
We've got two left for the songs that were taking part today. Two very different performances. So North Macedonia, who'd have thought that the impact of Dotter would be felt in the North Macedonian performance? Now, not going to give too much away. Okay, we are. He basically appears as a human glitter ball at one point towards the end of the performance. Now he's a passionate performer. We've all seen and got to know and love the preview video. He's an emotional performer. He is genuinely a very good singer. I mean, he is probably one of the best singers in the competition this year. I just feel it's a little bit too overblown. I know, yes, it's Eurovision. Of course, performances get a bit overblown, but I think he might just need to kind of rein in some of that passion, some of that emotion, because it's a decent enough song, and he is a very good singer. But I think there's a risk that it just becomes a little bit kitchen sink, a little bit too much thrown at it.
I think there's an authenticity to him and his performance. And I do think it maybe goes a little bit into the Oprah authenticity vibe. It's almost a little bit too much authenticity, and it's very earnest. I could potentially see it. There are nice moments in it. The bit where sort of light appears on his chest, and it's a heart, I think, or at least it's placed on his heart. And there are bits of this that remind me in a little way of Tamara in 2019, and that was again, a very earnest song in a way, but performed really well and authentically. As you say, if he toned back some of the trills of this, I think he could just drop the Dotterbest. That's not necessary in any way. It doesn't do anything to the song in my mind. Then he actually potentially could do okay, but it's a borderline for me. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's all for quote and no is one thing I said earlier on in my thing. For me, I think it's a really, really great vocal again, and there's no denying that, and it's going to get a lot of jury love, I think, because they tend to go for people that have got great voices. But behind the facade, there's not really much of a song there. It just kind of feels like it's more of a, I said it's more of a vocal warm-up exercise than a song itself. I just don't think there's really much there for that, and which is a shame, because again, he's another person that I love what he stands for. He's very out and proud, and I think in a country like North Macedonia, I think it's important that we have someone like that flying the rainbow flag, which I think is fantastic. But I just don't think it's really going to work overall. And this actually came last in the vote for the press vote, which again probably doesn't mean anything at all. But I just feel that it's missing something, and yeah, not bad, not great, just kind of meh for me.
Hit, miss, or maybe?
Say miss. I think it's a miss.
I'll say maybe.
I'm afraid I'm going for a miss on this one, just thinking of who it's up against. But
okay.
So okay. One more song. It was highly anticipated and rather long awaited. We had to wait quite a while to get a view of Leslie's performance. I think there's quite a lot involved in this performance. It's very complex. So I think they were spending quite a while kind of putting it all together, doing their closed run rehearsals. I think a few people thought, oh, we actually going to not see anything at all. But then we did get to see a run through. It stands out. That I'd be interested to know what was the planning meeting like when they storyboarded. What's this going to look like? What are we going to get on stage? That it's got everything. It's got a forest, like a storybook. Seeing the rehearsal performance, you won't quite yet see what all the visuals are going to be like on screen, and you could tell, from where she was moving her hands at times, there's probably going to be extra visuals that are going to appear on screen that are going to lift it further. There was some debate about the quality of her vocals. I actually thought she sang it pretty well. Again, she might have been holding back a bit. You never quite know from a rehearsal if they are saving a bit. It was a little bit towards the end of the song, again, felt a little bit as if she was straining. But it's different. A lot of thought's gone into it. I worry has maybe too much thought got into it, and there's too much thought of the performance and the visuals. But yeah, it stood out.
Yeah, so basically we have to remember that these rehearsals, especially the first one, it's all about getting the camera angles right. They've all rehearsed it in their own home country, but until you get on that stage, you don't know what it's going to be like. You have to hit the angles correctly, and the first rehearsals is not about vocals generally. It's all about making sure that you're able to put it together on the stage. And again, it's a very busy performance. The actual stage director for this one is the same guy, I can't remember his name, but he did Heroes from On Zermelov. So and I can see why it's got the same kind of vibe of a kind of like, basically she's walking through a storybook and there's like a forest and she's sort of superimposed in the forest, and it's actually quite clever the way it works. And I really like the sort of the whole story behind it, and stuff. And she looks great. Vocally, yeah, there was bits where she was struggling, but it's not an easy song to sing, as I can attest when I've sang it in the shower a few times when I'm getting ready. And I think it's a fast song that she needs to kind of work on her vocals and stuff. I think she's too busy concentrating on where to put her face and her hands and stuff. This is one that needs a lot of work. I think the raw materials are there. It's a bit like baking a cake. It's sort of the raw materials are there, but I think it needs just to be put in the oven for a bit longer, and then it might rise and it might flop because it's got not enough yeast in it or whatever. But the jury's out on this one. I think it's too early to call for this one, I would say.
There are elements. There was a song, I think, in the French national final in 2019 that had this kind of paper effect, I think a bridge or something like that. And there are elements of that meets Greta's Salome, where it's darker and a lot more sort of the forest that you don't want to necessarily spend time in. And I think actually one of the things I would probably suggest if I was sitting in the Irish delegation this evening would be take something out. there's so much going on, and it's that sort of Coco Chanel element where you, before you leave the house, take one thing off because you're wearing too much, and it's more pared back is better. And I think that the bits with the flicking book, they didn't work for me very much, really, and I would just ditch them completely. I think I think you're right. Because there's so much going on, Leslie does look a little bit like she's counting the steps. And of course, maybe to begin with, she's working out where she's going to stand. This is her first time running through this. But it does, she needs to be very comfortable with what she's doing, where she's moving, how she's going to move there. And that will allow her vocals to be better.
Yeah, sorry.
I think when she comes out of the kind of forest out into the main stage, it does feel really, it totally reminded me of the bit in Mon's song where he leaves the kind of screens behind and goes out into the arena, as it were. But it does also kind of feel very exposed. The light level is really high, and it's a bit like, could you not just have some lights bouncing around her that give it a bit more energy somehow? So yeah, I want to love it more, of course, being Irish, but then we have also, Ireland has had some shocking, terrible entries over the years that I haven't supported. But I like Leslie; she seems like a really cool entry to for Ireland. She's been a great ambassador for us, so I hope it does well.
I'm again, she's another artist that there's a lot of artists this year that I think are really positive and really just artists that I can really likable, and Leslie has this likability to her. She's a really she's a sort of out and proud lesbian, I think, and that's really something that's really resonates with me. And I think that's something that she's such a sweetheart, and I really want to wish her all the luck and stuff. But yeah, I think they'll be working hard over the next few days to see how they get on. I think it'll be the second rehearsal will be the one that we see if this is going to hit or flop, basically. So yeah, a long journey to go for Ireland, but it's about the journey, not the destination. You know.
Interestingly,
as long as she's got a map. So I just needed to make that.
Interestingly, they were the only act that actually could only run through twice today rather than 3 times, because it took such a while to get set up with their contraption, I guess.
Yeah. So hit or miss or maybe. At the moment, I'm saying maybe. I really want it to be a hit, but at the moment, I'm saying maybe. But I'm pushing it up there, hopefully.
Can I say hit me?
It's
probably a maybe. I hope it's a hit me.
Yeah. Alasdair?
Maybe I'm biased because I do genuinely love the song. It's one of my favorites, but I am still going to say a hit.
Okay.
Although there is a bit when she runs through the giant book, it does look a bit like she's running through a big car wash. They just need to kind of sort that bit out slightly.
Yeah, so that was a very nice day. So yes, that was a fun day overall. So if we had to pick the one song that we think was our favourite performance of the day, of the 6 that we saw, what do we think? I'll start with you, Alasdair.
Oh, favourite performance? I think I might have to say Russia, actually. Yeah, Russia.
I think I would agree with you. I think Russia was my favourite performance of the day.
Yeah, probably same. And if they iron out all the details and make it better, Ireland.
Okay, and anyone, if anyone who saw the rehearsals or saw the clips, let us know what you think your favourite was of the day as well. I know Monty has just said Russia was his favourite as well. But yes, that was a fun day overall. So we've got another big day ahead of us tomorrow. I'll just give you an idea of what we have online tomorrow. We'll be back with you at 6 o'clock again as usual. So we have Cyprus, Norway, Croatia, Belgium, then Israel, Romania, Azerbaijan, then a break, then Ukraine and Malta. So we've got much more performances. I think we've got 9 in total tomorrow. So quite a few more than today. But it'll be a busy day, and that'll be the whole of the first semi-final. We'll get to see who we think is going to qualify from that.
And most excitingly, tomorrow I go to Rotterdam to the on-site press centre and blow into a bag, not to test my alcohol levels, but to test that I have COVID, and go and see what it's like there. And hopefully I'll be able to join you at 6 o'clock. It all depends on when the press centre closes and if I can get reliable Wi-Fi and it's not pissing rain.
But all well and good. We'll see you tomorrow as well. You can give us a little flavour of what it's like in the press centre, just to really kind of rub it in.
Yeah, but thank you so much, guys, for joining us this evening. It's been great to do this. It's our first time doing it, so we hope that you've enjoyed that, and join us again tomorrow for some more fun.
Yeah, thanks everyone for joining us. Thanks Danny and Adrian for all your blogging today. We'll have Hass with us tomorrow. So yeah, thanks again, and we will see you tomorrow evening.